Alright, so the M&M Companion is like the Unearthed Arcana for Mazes and Minotaurs. So let's take a look and see what's in here. Okay, so they got background talents. This is sort of like the non-weapon proficiencies from 2nd edition D&D, and I never use those. I didn't want to limit what the players could do by giving them these talents, so I'd only do that, you know. Before 2nd edition, people didn't fall off their horse so much, but when it became a proficiency, then they had to make rolls. So it goes into some of the talents, and there's some new classes, which I'm not the Archer class. I don't think this class is needed. The Amazon could be the Archer class, or if you designed it right, the Noble could be the Archer class, or the Hunter could be the Archer class. So I didn't think that was really needed. And the Cavalryman class. Again, not needed. Centaur can easily be the Cavalryman class, or if you give the Noble a Chariot, he could do that same job. And there's an alternate version of the Amazon, which ends up being like a female noble, which you could already do. So I don't see the point of this. It's not that interesting. You could duplicate this by rolling up a female noble and making the right choices. I don't really like classes that do something an existing class already does. Okay, then there's this thing called Divine Agents, and you don't have to be a priest to do this, but your deity could give you some bonuses and have you be their agent, but then you have to go do their stuff more. I've run that, and it's been pretty fun. Okay, so there's some new combat options, which and critical hits. I never heard of critical hits until back in the 1st edition AD&D era. One of the other players had played RuneQuest, I think, and came up with this idea, and came up with a chart for it, and wanted to use this in our game. He was the DM. And in the very first round of the very first fight, my druid got hit on the head and lost a point of wisdom. And I hated critical hits ever since, never used them until I got to Mazes and Minotaurs. They made the fights more interesting, and they don't work against the really powerful monsters, so they're a good way to more quickly get rid of the low-level monsters. There's some new armor options. And one of the things I adopted from this book is the idea that javelins should be less encumbering than spears, so you can carry multiples of them, because if you don't, then you throw your javelin and you don't have a javelin anymore. And there's a bit about chariots, which, that's a good thing. There's not enough emphasis on chariots in adventures. So, there's a new class called Beastmasters. And this is an okay class, I guess. There's some spells. But you could do the same thing by running a nymph or a sorcerer, or even a barbarian could tame some beasts. So, I'm not sure why that's a good thing. But the Shapeshifter class I really like a lot. I wish this were in the main book, because it's unique, it's interesting, it's different from other games, and it's not overpowered. So, Shapeshifter. For the Elementalists, there are 2 new elements, light and dark. I had a player run light once, and it was not so fun. There's acolytes and ritual sacrifices. There's some non-Olympian cults, like the cult of Cybele, who has some interesting new powers like divine emasculation. The Cult of Dionysus can do Divine Madness. The Cult of Mithras, which they can do Resurrection. And there's a Druid one. If you're going to have Barbarians, you might as well have Druids too. So it's a variation of Cleric for Druids. And there's a few miscellaneous rules, like some different way of doing traps. And poison, medicine, some new intimidation, persuasion, seduction, taming beasts and monsters. Yeah, with this rule, there's no need for the Beastmaster class because barbarians, hunters, centaurs, and nymphs can all do this, and sorcerers can do it magically. So what's the point of a whole class devoted to that? There's a philosopher class, which have no powers at all, but they're immune to magic. There's some warfare rules. This is a mass combat set of rules. I tried them once and it was boring. So it looks better in the book than it did in actual play. So that is... I've only gone 6 minutes. I'm going to cover something else I put in here. This is an unofficial thing called Misdeeds and Madness. It's a supplement that a player made for the game. There's some new classes. Assassins with their poisons. There's Dionysus in classes. The Satyrs. And the Maenads. And witches, there's a witch class. And there's some mythic items. I've used a few of these in my game. But the new classes in this supplement, they looked better when I was first looking at them, but after I've read them a few times, I decided they're not so good as other games' versions of these. So that is the M&M Companion, which, as I said, is like the Unearthed Arcana of this game. It's a bunch of rules you don't need, but you can try them and you might like them.